agent. As a First Money agent, you get to enjoy so much that the brand has to offer. Grow your social relevance as FirstBank financial agent in your community with business expansion possibilities due to increased awareness for your existing business and increased patronage too. Also, you get to earn extra income via commissions from transactions processed from being a First Money agent. To enroll as an agent, visit www.firstbanknigeria.com/personalbanking/ways-to-bank/firstmoney or visit any FirstBank branch to get started. A First Money agent can serve every Nigerian. Service offerings include cash deposits, cash withdrawals, funds transfer, airtime top-up and bill payments, account opening, BVN enrollment, and so much more. What are you waiting for? Partner with us. Become a First Money agent today.
You first. FirstBank.
In 1894, our first branch opened in Lagos, Nigeria. And we took our place in this new land brimming with possibilities and surprises. Take Kano, for instance, where the city's wealthiest trader made his first deposit. 20 bags of silver arriving on camelback. Aren't you glad that we offer online banking today? Expanding across the West African sub-region and beyond, our early presence made it possible for all hardworking Africans to build great things. So is it any wonder that not one, but two First Bankers have gone on to become Nigeria's central banker? We are intricately woven into the fabric of society, supporting polo for over 100 years and pushing the limits of athletic performance. Rooted in tradition, but constantly leaning forward into the future. Are you coming?
You first. FirstBank.
FirstBank Nigeria is West Africa's premier bank. We have a presence in 6 African countries, offering diverse banking services to more than 32 million customers who speak 750 languages. We offer international banking services in London, United Kingdom, and Paris, France, as well as corresponding banking services in China. With an over 750 branch network, we serve the needs of individuals and businesses across all 774 local governments in Nigeria. We have over 11,000 employees who can communicate seamlessly in each of Nigeria's 250 languages and offer banking solutions tailored to local needs. We are committed to growing our people and the communities in which we operate. In 2020, we gave out 25,000 retail loans to pay school fees, upgrade learning facilities in schools, and help businesses stay afloat, all in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have empowered 100,000 Nigerians with extra income as First Money agents. All 100,000 First Money agents at every nook and cranny of the nation were always on hand to serve our customers in 2020. We are investing in growth and technology, and this is evident in our digital banking solutions, as more than 16 million customers carry out transactions every day via our First mobile app, our First online internet banking, and across 894 other channels. In 2020, we were open to our customers 24 hours a day and 7 days a week via our always-on contact centers. With our agents working round the clock, we resolved 50,000 customer complaints across all our call centers in 2020. With 2,892 ATMs across the nation and 11 million cards, individuals and businesses were given access to cash for successful transactions. Even at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are very social, with a community of over 4.2 million people across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We are continuously working to serve our customers better and to ensure that they have the best banking experience with FirstBank Nigeria.
All All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen from around the world, wherever you are. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the FirstBank FinTech 5.0 Summit, brought to you by the Premier Bank, FirstBank of Nigeria. This, of course, is going to be a great conversation around financial technology. It is literally the hottest topic coming out of Africa's largest economy as of right now. The theme for today, again from FirstBank 5.0 Summit, is open banking and its derivative opportunities for the financial ecosystem. It's a fantastic topic. We've got a great set of panelists that are going to be talking to you about this today. So you folks out there should sit tight. This is an interactive session. It's an interactive session. At the bottom of your screen there, you will see a Q&A box. Put your questions in. Our keynote speakers are going to have an interactive session with you. You can put your question in. Your questions will be answered. There's going to be lots of dialogue. My name is Rotus, by the way, Rotus Odiri. Glad to be with you all. So look, just yesterday, just 24 hours ago, the central bank governor of Nigeria was talking about how the fintech ecosystem has brought in about $500 million just this year alone. FirstBank, with these summits, annual summits, has positioned itself at the forefront of the conversation about what fintech opportunities can come into Nigeria, and it's great to be here. So once again, we've got a great set of panelists that are going to be talking to you all about, once again, the theme, open banking and its derivative opportunities for the financial system. So what is open banking? The seamless connectivity and all the opportunities that fintech are going to be bringing us here during this conversation. So without further ado, I am going to be calling upon the Managing Director and CEO of FirstBank. In 2019, I made the silly error of saying Mr., and somebody rushed out to the front of the stage and said, Rosus, it's Doctor, do it again. And so I had to apologize and then reintroduce him. So I'm going to get it right today. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm calling upon Managing Director and CEO, Dr. Adeshola Adejutan, to open up this fantastic event with his address. Good morning, sir. The floor is yours.
Good morning, and good morning to all the distinguished panelists and my colleagues and all other invitees. I'm excited. It's the 5th edition of FirstBank FinTech Summit. Let me, on behalf of our board of directors and my colleagues on the bank's leadership team, welcome all the panelists, the other invitees, and my colleagues to the 5th edition of our FinTech Summit. This summit, as you know, is organized by our bank to create a global platform for conversations around the future of innovation in the financial services sector, specifically in the financial technology space. And our objective is to contribute to the rapid evolution, and if you choose to call it revolution, in the banking and financial services service delivery angle. For this year, the theme of this year is open banking and its derivative opportunities in the financial ecosystem, which we believe promises to be very exciting and engaging, especially with the caliber of thought leadership that we've successfully put together here today. We believe this will give us a very good platform to hear from the leading authorities in this area, because open data, cloud technology, artificial intelligence, the way they all play together to create the right environment for innovation or revolution is becoming very important. For us, open banking today demonstrates the practical fusion of these variables that I've covered, presenting remarkable potentials that can redefine product development, customer experience, and overall value creation within the financial services system, with significant multiplier effects, not just for players, but even for consumers of financial services products. The regulatory framework for open banking in Nigeria, as issued by the central bank, on the rules and premises which financial data sharing can take place across the financial system, and the National Information Technology Development Agency's data protection regulation are indications of the future of regulation around open banking. We believe there's enough space for continuous innovation and for us as an economy to rapidly embrace this with a view to materially upgrading the quality of financial services in Nigeria. As an institution that is over 127 years old, our bank, we have transferred a series of industry transformation, and we will continue to play a leading role in furthering the conversations on refining regulatory frameworks and shaping the industry, not just on open banking, but for all contemporary issues that will impact our industry. We will also continue to demonstrate our support for startups and innovators in this fintech space by providing them with the relevant data, support, and infrastructure to enable them to scale appropriately. Every step we take continues to be geared towards strategically positioning our institution as a bridgehead and the reference point for fintech and financial services industry providers across the continent, given our presence in at least 6 other African locations. Potentially, that will go up as we continue to lead the change towards realizing the future of banking. I am particularly very optimistic that the financial services industry will benefit from the conversations at today's summit. I'm also very positive that this platform will continue to come up with innovative solutions to further drive growth and deepen financial inclusion, just as we explore the inherent opportunities in open banking with other experts across the industry. Like I said at the beginning, we are particularly excited with the caliber of speakers that we have here today. And I want to thank them for accepting to be here with us. And for the audience and other viewers all over the world, we think this is going to be a great platform where we can share ideas. Thank you, and we look forward to a very exciting day.
Thank you so much once again to Dr. Adeshola Adediton, the Managing Director and CEO of FirstBank of Nigeria. Of course, you heard him right there in his address, where he said that FirstBank is going to be connecting with SMEs in the fintech space in order for them to scale. So FirstBank's SME Connect, you definitely want to take advantage of that in order to assist with getting fintech companies to scale across the country. So again, thank you so much to Managing Director and CEO, Dr. Adeshola Adediton. I'm seeing questions already. This is great. I'm seeing questions already. So again, it's an interactive forum. Pop in your questions in the Q&A box there at the bottom of your screen. There's also going to be a brochure that's going to be available after the event. Nice, colorful brochure. If you put in your email address when you signed up for this event, you'll get that. So that'll be coming to you after the event is over. All right, we're getting into the meat and bones of this event now. I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Undubisi Ekekwe. He is the lead faculty of Tekedia Institute. He invented and patented a robotic system which the United States government acquired assignee rights. Dr. Ekekwe holds 2 doctoral and 4 master's degrees, including a PhD in engineering from Johns Hopkins University. You will know Johns Hopkins University because they were at the forefront of tracking the amount of COVID infections across the world. Everybody was going to Johns Hopkins University's website. So yeah, he's got a PhD and engineering from Johns Hopkins University, USA. That's Professor Undubisi Ekekwe. He earned an undergraduate degree from Federal University of Technology, Owerri, where he graduated as his class's best student. While in Analog Devices Corporation, he co-designed an accelerometer for the iPhone. He's a recipient of the IGI Global Book of the Year Award, IBM Entrepreneur and World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. Professor Ekekwe has held professorships in Carnegie Mellon University, Babcock University, and served in the United States National Science Foundation Committee. The South African press call him a doctor of innovation. And that's why we have him here, for helping organizations on the mechanics of business innovation, strategy, and growth. Since 2009, he's also the chairman of Fast Micro Group, which controls many startups and entities, and has been writing in the Harvard Business Review as well. He was recognized by The Guardian as one of 60 Nigerians making Nigerian lives matter on Nigerian 60th Independence Day back in October 1st, 2020. Professor Ekekwe, it is an absolute pleasure to have you at this FinTech 5.0 Summit by FirstBank, and we would love to get you on your way with your keynote address. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you so much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's quite a privilege and honor to have this opportunity of coming to this altar to have the conversation on the mechanics of market system. I'm DBC. Okay, well, I will be sharing my slide now, and then we will get started. Okay, let me just that's just a minute. Okay, great. Okay, so our conversation today is on open banking, the grand unification of application utility age. Essentially, we'll be looking at some of the most promising elements of the dawn of the open banking. It's a mechanics where banks are asked to share their customer data through APIs with third-party companies so that they can help to drive innovation at a very critical level. As we go through this conversation, I will share what I do believe could become huge opportunities that we can leverage as a people through the banking ordinance in our country so that we can drive prosperity and bring so many people into the promise that we expect them to be. But for us to go there, let me take you back to your secondary school days. I had a very good one in secondary school. I will take you back to the old debate when some of the finest Greek philosophers were asking and trying to answer one of the most important questions of the time. What is the universe made up of? What is the essence of our universe? What is the component upon which everything we do on this earth is built upon? Thales said that the world is made up of water. Heraclitus said that the world is made up of fire. But I like what Pythagoras, the guy that gave us the Pythagoras theorem, he postulated that the world is nothing but numbers. In other words, if the world is nothing but numbers, it means that the business of humanity is nothing but the business of numbers. If you understand the numbers of your customer, you become a very better banker. If you understand the numbers around human systems, you become a very better doctor. If you understand the numbers around anything you do on earth, you have the possibility of doing that thing better. So if the world is nothing but numbers, the implication of that is that anytime in any sector or in any industrial system that we have a better understanding of the numbers around that nexus, we are going to do that job very well. So what do we have to do here? It simply means that the quest to getting better in any sector or any industry will be how to build better data systems so that we can understand the numbers around a particular industry. So, but for us to do that, let me take you back to the mission of firms. Why do we really have companies? Why do we have FirstBank of Nigeria? Why do we need to have companies like Amazon, Google? Why do we need to have companies? It turns out that the reason why we need to have companies is because market systems are inherently imperfect. If market systems are inherently imperfect, it means there needs to be a perturbation that make it possible for demand and supply to come into perfect equilibrium point. Because of information asymmetry, the demand knows something the supply doesn't know, the supply knows something the demand doesn't know. Somebody has to bring them together. It's only when that person has brought demand and supply into this equilibrium point that is when transaction can take place. And let's assume that NDBC has just landed in Lagos and I'm very, very hungry. Let's assume I don't have a family member, I can eat. There is no restaurant in the city of Lagos. The only option available for me will begin is to go to every door in Lagos, knocking at the door. I said, please, do you have food to serve? He said, I don't have food. I called to the second person, do you have food to serve? He said, I don't have food to serve. But at the same time, I'm looking for someone who has food to serve. There is also the possibility that somebody has food, but I cannot get to that particular house. So what has happened here is that because of information asymmetry, there is a broken down system. He has information I don't have, and I have information he does not have. And because we cannot have a market relationship. So what happens? A company wakes up, a young lady wakes up in the morning and say, I am going to start a company, and that company is called a restaurant. And when I start that restaurant, anytime DBC is hungry, he doesn't need to be knocking at every door in Lagos. What he will just do is that to go to that company called restaurant, and when he goes to that restaurant, I am going to serve him food. And then NDBC will compensate me by paying me money, which is the cost that individual has imposed in the system for fixing a friction which has existed in the market, which means whenever NDBC is hungry, he can go to a company to eat food. So across market ordinance and sectors, companies do one thing. They fix frictions which exist between demand, which exists for customers. And the ability to fix that friction can go back to the postulation by Pythagoras. If that customer knows me better, if that customer understands my needs, if that customer can get into the numbers of the customers, that company can deliver better services. And the same thing happens when you go to bank. Somebody has 1,000 naira in Lagos. He doesn't know what to do with that. Let's say 1 million naira. At the same time, he's looking for somebody he can give that money at 10% interest rate. He looks all over his community. He can't find that person. But at the same time, he's looking for somebody to lend that money. Another person is also looking for somebody he can borrow money from. Because of information asymmetry, they cannot have a business relationship. FirstBank many decades ago, wake up and say, we are going to start a bank. So that the man who has money, we bring it to FirstBank Nigeria, and then the person who needs money to expand his poultry business will come to borrow that money from us. And by bringing that, FirstBank has fixed a market friction which has existed between the man who has money and the man who needed money. These constructs runs across market systems. And one thing that we have identified is this: the capacity to fix this friction correlates with the ability for us to understand the numbers around these two customers. In other words, the more we understand the numbers, going back to the postulation of Pythagoras, the better we can do business. And how are you going to do those things? You have to build the capabilities. Capabilities are now things that separate you from other companies, things that make you better, things that qualify you to become that company who can bring this demand and bring this supply into a equilibrium point. And when you do that, you begin to deliver business services at a higher level. We are going to see how the quest for open banking takes back to that postulation by Pythagoras, that the more we understand the numbers around our environment, around our market system, the better we can deliver customers at a very good end. I've always said these things, that companies that serve the needs of customers will never be great. That's what they have told us in economics. The customers' needs are things they already know they need. The companies have to serve beyond the needs of customers to the expectations and the perceptions of customers. And I'll take you back to 1990s when we had some of the new generation banks in Nigeria coming up. The banks of the old were serving the needs of customers, that you can put your money in one branch of a bank. And when you move to another city in Nigeria, you will not have access to that money. You have banking with a bank in Lagos and you just travel to Kano and you run out of cash. And the same branch is sitting before you. They say, no, you can't have access to your money. You have to go back to Lagos because that is the only place you can take this money. But you have already met the needs of that particular customer by offering the banking services, but you have not met the expectation of that customer. Great companies go beyond needs, expectation to the perceptions of customers. Perceptions of customers are giving them things most times they never even expected that companies can give them. Imagine the experiences of customers when it was now possible that somebody can walk into a bank in Lagos and open an account. And he goes to Kano, he goes to Umuahia, he goes to Oshobo, and he or she can actually operate the same bank account irrespective of the geographical location of a branch of the bank. That was taking customer to the level of perception. And when you do that, what happens is typical. You move those customers from becoming customers into fans. Blessed is that company whose customers are fans because they become apostles to help that company pursue its mission in the market, postulating that this is the best place to do business. And moving into that perception innovation comes back to understanding the data of your customers. There is no way you can build a great brand. There is no way you can build a great company if you do not understand the customers that surround a particular brand. Open banking offers us the promise to have a better insight, to have a consolidated insight about what the future of our customers are. And if we can do that, making it possible that we can share data across different nations, we are going to serve these customers at a better level. The promise is this, The financial systems in Nigeria, across Africa and across the world, will become the operating system that run our world. Just like we have the computer system, we have the firmware, we have the application utilities. The operating systems of our economic system will be financial system. Because at the end of everything, people want to be paid, no matter whatever you're doing. If you are a banker, your job is to make sure that the doctor gets paid when the services are offered. The bricklayer gets paid, the carpenter gets paid, the engineers get paid. So financial services becomes the operating system that runs our economic architecture. Because the compensation, everything we do in market system is nothing but revenue. Revenue is what the market pays you, compensates you for the frictions that you have overcome. In elementary physics, friction is a force. There is only one thing that can overcome that force in business. It's a product or service. Because the needs of customers are frictions that customers have. And the only way you can overcome that friction is by giving that customer a service, giving that customer a product. And when that product can meet and overcome that friction, you have solved a very great problem for that customer. And what does the customer do? The customer says, I'm going to pay you. And that ability to pay you is the revenue that you've accumulated for offering that service to that customer. Financial services becomes the operating system to make for that efficient utilization of factors of production, making it possible that we can organize all the elemental constructs for the manufacturing and the production of those products and services. So when we have a financial service that works, we have an economic architecture that can actually perform in a nation. And these things are evident because the elemental construct is what is knowledge? We need to build the knowledge systems of the future. And we also need to have the entrepreneurial capitalist mindset moving into the domain of having young people that can take opportunities that are coming before us. Empires have always been built with knowledge. Go back to the old time of pharaohs. Go back to the Greek moment of the Greek philosophers. He said that in the time of Moses, that he came and appeared before the Israelites. They were thrilled because he has studied under Pharaoh. It turns out at the time of Moses, Egypt had the best educational system, the best astrologers, they had the best thinkers, and Egypt ruled and brought the world to the world civilization. And if you go back to the time of the Greeks, as they were building Aristotle, Heraclitus, they were postulating all those constructs that we have come to know about it. They were also building shipping lines in the Mediterranean. So if you look at the elements, the knowledge systems that we can acquire through open banking ordinance, it's not just going to affect the financial services. The open banking ordinance is going to have the capability impact to improve our mortgage system. It's going to improve our real estate business. It's also going to improve so many things. But for that to happen now, we have to have pioneers, people that can actually take that first move and say, we are going to build the APIs of the future. I'm coming back to that. And those things have to be built on numbers. What you call data today is nothing but numbers. When you have that number and when you have that data system shared and made available across ecosystems, you begin the phase of open banking. In as much as we have called it open banking, it's actually open financial services. Because what is critical here is that most everything we do in the market system, banks are behind. Because at the end of the day, when you open up a business, you need a bank account. And then imagine the construct where through APIs, different companies in different sectors can actually have access to those customers. And if we do that, it means that we have the capacity to reduce the frictions across the nations of how we can actually deal and offer services to these customers. And it's going to be a great moment for a nation like Nigeria, because if you look across most elements, you see that we have underperformed. We are a GDP of less than 500 billion for 210 million people. I do believe that we have an optimality of moving our GDP to 3 trillion. And if we do that, it means that everything and every opportunity we have in Nigeria today will actually be increasing by a factor of 6. Our agriculture needs an element of open banking because we need to know the customers. It's only when we know the customer that is also the time that we can offer them credit services. That is also the time that we can offer them things they need for them to grow agricultural sector. Our healthcare system remains extremely primitive. because we don't understand the people we serve. It turns out that the banking system has innovated for many, many decades in this nation. It remains the most innovative sector in the country. It pioneered the banking BVN system. And the BVN has become the standard for us to actually know who is who in the country. That government now have to depend on BVN for us to actually run our system. You go into our educational sector, you go into the technology sector. Without what investment the banks have made, we will not have the fintech space. So it's a very critical thing for us to say, how can we use new technology ordinances to expand the hypothesis that this country cannot just be a place where we thought, that it's actually going to be a country where we can hit, let's say 3 trillion, maybe by 2030 or even at worst at 2035. There is only one thing I know that if we do in this country, progress, prosperity will be shared in abundance across rural communities. If every land in Nigeria is given velocity, the man who owns 100 acres of land can now say, I have got properties, and those properties are captured in the balance sheet of banks because I'm banking with FirstBank of Nigeria. And the FirstBank of Nigeria knows that I inherited 100 acres of land. And with that 100 acres of land, I can have access to credit so that I can pay school fees for my children. I can also take my wife when she's to the hospital. Things begin to happen. It means that the opportunities for the future of banking, for the future of market system, we can actually see them in the rural community. But because today those things do not happen, it means we see our rural citizens as people that don't have needs. How can you call a man who has 100 cows a poor man? How can you call a man who has 1,000 hectares of land a poor man? Today in Nigeria, we do that because those access are outside the formal sector. But we can change those things through the promises of open banking by unifying all the major economy, all the major sectors in our nation, bringing them into the construct of the banking system so that even the innovators in different sectors can actually have access to that data, and using that we can bring them to visibility so that we can push them to where they need to be. What is happening today in Nigeria, if you go through the histories of places like United States, you see that it's typical. I looked through the companies that were very, very big in America in 1917. You can see that the steel companies were the most powerful companies in America. And then 50 years later, in 1967, you begin to see infrastructure companies, technology infrastructure companies, AT&T, IBM, they now started becoming the big companies. And then if you now come now, just in our time here, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Google, Google, they call it Alphabet. These are now the knowledge companies of today. So there is this translation that you began with building, and then you move into infrastructure, then you move into the knowledge system. It turns out that there are many critical similarities that you can also see when you look at it. And if you look into here in Nigeria, the left-hand side, these are the most dominant companies in the Nigerian Stock Exchange. These are the leading companies. I think most of them, they are more than 1 trillion naira in their market cap. You see that we are still in the phase of building critical infrastructure like cement company, Bua and Dangote Cement are the big companies we have in the nation. And then you now see the infrastructure companies like MTN and Airtel Africa as also there. Then you now next, which means that we are still in the business of how do we eat the right food? How do we feed our citizens? Then in America, by the right-hand side, you see that they now have companies that are actually at the knowledge phase. That's where you see these are the largest companies they have. What am I trying to draw here? What you can see here is that Nigeria has actually brought together the evolutionary phase of American companies 1917 to 1967 together, because we now have companies like MTN also merging up with Bua. And I am hoping and I am believing that by 2030, some of the leading companies in Nigeria, they may not necessarily be listed in Nigeria Stock Exchange, will become companies of like the knowledge companies like we have in Google. So that is the promise we have. And that is the possibility of the future. And that is also the reason why open banking offers us a very, very important tool. It makes it possible for you to share customer data as a bank with trusted third parties through what they call APIs. APIs are basically technology systems that you can now share somebody's data without any kind of violation of privacy. without any kind of risk. So for retail customers, many of us that go into the bank to do business, it gives you the opportunity that your data can be aggregated, and with the analytic systems, you can have a better insight of what is happening within your banking experience. So you can go into your wallet in FirstBank app, you can have a better insight because everything has been brought together in one place. And you know this. There is never going to be a catalytic evolution in Nigeria's economic architecture without a credit system. A credit system is needed and urgently needed for us to have the opportunity of actually expanding our economy. It's just not a question that I need to have money before I can build a house. It's not just a question that I need to have 100% of the money before I can buy a car. It's not just a question that I need to even have money before I buy a laptop. In America today, where I'm speaking from, you can buy a car and pay over 7 years. You can buy a house and pay over 35 years. But people do magic in places like Nigeria where they actually have to pay 100% for them to have a house. It's not going to happen because the way it is today, a lot of our citizens are caught out of the system of owning a house, of owning properties because they cannot afford to pay at once. I do believe that open banking, through that data aggregation and analytics system, can also bring a national credit architecture that will make it possible for us to actually rise, not just few of us, but everyone to rise. Imagine what it means that every person with a BVN in Nigeria will have a credit score. I understand there are so many FinTech that are trying to build disparate credit system, but those things are not necessarily going to work. We need a Nigerian banking ordinance to have a credit architecture tied to people's BVN so that you don't even need to make effort. It becomes a natural way of doing things. And if you do that within 5 years, we can see people having credit system that they can actually begin to rise in our economic system. And of course, the SMEs will benefit. Integrated person and accounting system protocol will come because you can have more visibility in what is happening in your business. And you can have a better understanding of your cash flow and deposit because as that data is flowing, going in and going out, you can have everything in one place. It's going to be an amazing experience if we can actually get it done. I understand there are so many people that will say, why do I have to share my customer data with my potential competitors? I also want to tell them about the IWA apprenticeship system. If you go into the IWA apprenticeship system, people empower others so that at the end of the day, the society becomes better. And if you have the same mindset that I am a very big bank, I can share my customer data with FinTechs, with real tech, with other sectoral participants. At the end of the day, we can grow the pie of the Nigerian economy. And if we grow the pie of the Nigerian economy, I'm going to capture more value and great things will happen in that country. There is always something that I'm fascinated living here in America. Intelligent lender. You log into PayPal if you have a PayPal merchant account. One thing, depending on your position, the way you're doing transaction, PayPal shows you a button. Please accept you have $50,000 working capital credit. You don't even need to apply. All you just need to do is accept. And once you click that button, within the next 24 hours, PayPal will release $50,000. Then if you go to some other banks, if you are using a corporate bank here, you log in, they say, oh, you qualify for line of credit. You know, what I'm trying to say here is that the customer does not even need to apply for these loans. Rather, the system automatically uses the data systems within your account to tell you that you can be qualified for $50,000. It's just like going into an ATM and you're trying to withdraw, let's say, 3,000 naira. And the ATM says, you have 3,000, you can withdraw, but we can also give you a loan of 5,000 naira. And the ATM says, accept that you're taking this line, this credit overdraft of, you just accept it. Then the ATM automatically will process that additional money and you take it. You know, beautiful plains of Sokoto to the grassland of Yobe. From the rainforest of Owerri to the plateaus of Jos. Boys and girls, men and women, you're looking not just open banking, but they're looking for opportunity and shared prosperity. And if the vista for that will come through the opportunities of open banking and the promises I believe that Nigerians will believe. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity. Thank you.
Fantastic stuff. Absolutely. This is why FirstBank reaches out to Professor Undubisi Ikekwe, because he's a bold visionary and he puts forward incredible ideas, practical ideas that inspire, and spark innovation. Professor Ikekwe, thank you so much for that address. You spoke about so much, and you sparked the debates in the chat room, the chat box, also the Q&As, a whole bunch of questions. Professor Ikekwe, I quickly want to ask you a question here before we get to our next speaker. There's a lot of questions on privacy and security. For instance, let me just take this one here, one of our questions here. Great discussion, Professor Undubisi. I've got a question though. In as much as nothing is really secure in terms of open banking, how is the data of customers secured if they're going to be shared to aid data learning? Everyone wants to be assured some form of privacy. I may not want my financial data to be shared with anyone except I give permission for it. So, and there's a whole bunch of other questions, Professor Ikekwe, about privacy and security with respect to open banking. Would you like to address that, please?
Yeah, I think, of course, privacy and security, everyone must of necessity be concerned. But interestingly, there are many cases. We have many case studies, even in the United Kingdom. This is not new. In US, there is a startup called Pledge. In short, what Pledge does is, if you are trying to get a loan from a FinTech, if you use Pledge API, you log in, the AI, remember, human beings are not necessarily the people that will be doing all these things. So you're actually using computer codes. So a computer code wants to check if this customer really ready for a loan. So once you put in your information, that AI system goes into your bank account in quote in FirstBank, and it scans the bank account and says, oh, this person is not good for a loan. So human beings are not necessarily the ones that will be looking at this. And interestingly, if you use the open banking API system, it's even less invasive than the current model we are using today, where you have to print your bank statement, send it to one company before they will look at all your entries and transactions before they approve it. Let's say in the United States here, it's machines that will actually do that. And the machine, it takes less than 2 seconds to make that decision. So which one is more secure? Printing your physical bank statement, sending it and uploading it in a server of a FinTech, you don't know who is working there, and human being will manually look at that data, or using a terminal evolution technology where you give the API the opportunity to have access to your bank account in FirstBank because there is already a protocol that makes that possible. Yeah, it takes a second. So API systems are actually more secure. They are actually give you better privacy because machines are making the decisions and not human system. And I think I'll prefer it than sending any human being my physical bank statement. Thank you.
Great stuff. One more quick question for you, Professor Ikekwe. This is more specific to Nigeria. This is from Tairu Ogungbe. And for all our viewers, please continue to, all our participants, continue to send in your questions there at the bottom of the box. It says, Professor Ikekwe, great presentation. I love your work. Your opinions on open banking are flawless, but could this be implemented in Nigeria where there doesn't seem to be coordination in data collection? Professor?
Yes, I think Nigeria has two different elements. You have the banking sector and others. And if you look at the history of the banks and what they have done, in short, I recall vividly when I was still in a secondary school, I said, I'm going to work in the bank because I felt that was actually a place where they were doing really cool stuff. They were able to do the USSD, they were able to do the NIS, they were able to do the BVN, whether the politicians were working in Abuja or not. So if the banks are going to leak this, believe that they will do it. The question I have though is whether the banks think it's actually a good business. And that is the reason why I put that smiling curve. How can the banks capture value instead of empowering other members of the community? Because there is that propensity that if the banks share their customer data, people will make tons of money from banks and banks will not capture value. And that is really the risk. But if the banks believe that they want to do this and they are not worried about losing control because people can access their customer data and now go and build businesses on those customers without them, I think there is really no risk. Yeah, they can do that. It's not a rocket science, but they have to commit that they want to do it.
Fantastic stuff. Professor Undubisi Ekekwe. So many other questions, but we got to move on because of time. Thank you so much, sir. All right, I want to introduce, actually, this is actually pretty important. When MD CEO Dr. Adeshola Adeduton mentioned that FirstBank wants to partner with SMEs to help them scale, we got a lot of questions about where that can happen. I mentioned SME Connect. So if you're an SME, you want to partner with FirstBank and with your ideas and so on, smeconnect.firstbanknigeria.com. smeconnect.firstbanknigeria.com. All right, let's get to our next speaker. Again, our big thanks to Professor Undubisi Ekekwe. He's going to still stick around because there's a panel discussion coming up. Next presentation is going to be on global perspectives to open banking. It's from Ankit Sharma, who's the director of strategy at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Ankit Sharma, of course, is based out of Mexico. He's focused on providing strategic advice to finance issues related to go-to-market strategies, digital transformation, and innovation. His work has spanned the full range of the financial services value chain for driving value creation, from seeking profitability growth to optimizing operating models. Having started his career in consulting in London, Ankit has worked with multiple financial institutions, retail banks, insurance firms, investment banks across Europe, Latin America, Middle East, North America. So it is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Ankit Sharma. Ankit, the floor is yours. Please go right ahead. And ladies and gentlemen, our participants, remember, keep your questions coming. We'll have questions, take questions after the presentation. Go ahead, Ankit.
Thanks, Rotus. It's a pleasure to be here in this session. I'm really honored to be in the session speaking about the global perspectives of open banking. Can I have the slides, please? And then we can kick off my session. Well, while my slides get uploaded, in my talk, I want to focus on the global use cases of open banking and draw parallels for FirstBank. But before I go into this, I want to set the scene and define what open banking is, and then go into the global use cases. So if you can move to the next slide, please. The next one. Yes. So on this specific slide, as we can see, open banking refers to the opening up of internal bank data and processes to external parties via digital channels. These external parties, as Professor was mentioning as well, they could be banks or authorized third parties who are acting on behalf of the customers. So as we can see on this slide, without open banking, in this day and age, there's a one-to-one relationship of the customers with the bank for different use cases. For example, for a customer to know their account information, transaction history, or for payment initiation as well. So in short, these user connections are straight, dedicated, and closed. They are one-to-one from the customer to the bank. But then in the world of open banking, there is a collaboration model which allows firms to share data and services through APIs. And this collaboration is not only between financial services firms, but even with non-financial services firms as well. And I'll go into this a bit later in my talk. So in summary, through open banking, as you can see, data is being shared through APIs. So basically, this means that the way we view data ownership changes completely. Currently, it is the banks who own the data of their customers. But through open banking, this whole ownership structure is being inverted. It is a customer who owns the data. It is a customer who decides which entities can access their data and for what objectives. Next slide, please. So in this context, now I want to give you some examples of how open banking is being implemented in the world. These examples are from Europe, but this would give you an idea of what potential use cases Nigeria can see in the days and years to come. The first example is of a personal finance manager. For example, for a retail banking client, a personal finance manager aggregates information from different bank accounts, different insurance accounts, in order to offer them a unique view of their finances. For example, a customer may have 3 different accounts in 3 banks, two with 2 different insurance companies. The personal finance manager will classify all the expenses and all the transactions automatically so that this client can know his or her financial position in real time, in a visual and an easy to understand manner. In this day and age, a customer would need to go into 3 apps of 3 different banks to understand what his current financial position is. But with PFM, this problem is being solved. There are multiple examples in the world of PFMs. In Spain, there is Fintonic. They've also entered the Latin American market now. In US, there is a PFM well-established, Mint. In Scandinavia and Europe, Meniga is another great example of a PFM as well. And in the countries where open banking has been implemented, we have seen that this is potentially the first use case that comes up, and the banks are being and that the banks are developing. The second example is related to credit scoring. Professor in his keynote mentioned that in Nigeria, credit is an issue where a lot of customers are not being given credit, even though they have some assets, right? Land, they have cattle, but they are not formal. So credit scoring is an issue that is being resolved through open banking. Here I'll give you an example of a fintech that's working in the commercial banking space. Ivoca is a fintech in the UK, and their vision is that for an SME, a small and medium enterprise, they should get credit in a seamless way, and it should be as easy as booking an air ticket. What they do is they have connected. They're connected with the 3 biggest banks in the UK, and if a SME goes to them for a loan, the SME can provide 5 years of transaction history in seconds to this fintech when they're applying for a credit facility. So through the application of open banking, the operational cost and time which Ivoca was taking for underwriting has been reduced massively, and customers are getting their credit decisions much faster. It is a win-win for both. The third example is related to payments. Here again, an example from the UK. NatWest is a big bank in the UK that's teamed up with Carphone Warehouse. That's a company that sells cell phones. So this alliance helps customers pay their monthly payments directly through their bank account without using their Visa or MasterCard. So customers using their Carphone Warehouse app are presented with a button where they click on it, they go to the bank app, and automatically they can make the payment in a much more seamless manner. So for the customers, this experience is much more seamless and faster. For Carphone Warehouse, it saves them the transaction fees they were paying Visa and MasterCard, and also the settlement is faster. So these are the 3 examples I wanted to talk about. And once open banking gets established in the Nigerian market, I'm sure it won't be long for us to see these examples in the Nigerian market as well. Next slide, please. The one before that. Yes. So on this slide specifically, I want to talk about different models of open banking that banks can follow. These models are oriented around 2 dimensions: product focus and customer relationship focus. I will not go into the details of these models in this session, but there are 3 points I want to highlight. And these would be points to think about. One, that these models are not entirely new models. What open banking is offering is a way that is easier than before for banks to decide which models work for them and then implement it. The second one, for any financial services company like FirstBank, they need to identify which model would work best for them. And this can be based on each financial product they're offering to their customers. For example, for a specific bank, a bank can choose to own the entire value chain and be in the traditional integrated quadrant, or for current accounts, they can choose to be an infrastructure player. Third point, that traditional banks most of them in globally right now would fall within the traditional integrated quadrant, where they control the entire value chain. I know this slide might have raised a few questions, and in fact, this was one of the aims to present this slide. I want to move on to the next slide to talk about the rules of the how banks can be ready for open banking. But if there are any questions related to what these models mean, happy to take these questions during the Q&A session. So next slide, please. So on this, the one before that. Yeah. So on this specific slide, I want to talk about what banks can do to be ready for open banking, and what banks need to develop in order to set their goals and vision that aligns with their operating capacities and strategic objectives. Here, I have 3 recommendations. One, whilst the rules of open banking and the rules of the game are being developed, banks must start to think about clarifying strategic opportunities and identifying the pathways for growth. Here, different areas of banks, which include strategy, transformation, product, marketing, IT, and operations, they must come together and think about how bank can compete in the long term in the open banking era. And once this view is finalized, banks must start to decide which capabilities and which business models and which partners they need to work with in order to bring this vision into reality. Second, banks need to work on their technology component. Banks must set up their digital and data engine. Banks must define the architecture of their core API libraries. And this can be done the way it's being done in the US, which is industry-wide, they've decided what architecture they're going to use, or the way it's being done in the UK, Europe, and other countries of Latin America, where it's purely regulatory driven. The third important aspect is strengthening of security and governance mechanisms. As one of the questions was asked to the professor related to customer privacy, data governance, security, this is a very important aspect. So on this, banks must start thinking about how they can strengthen their security and governance mechanisms, and also must develop an awareness program for their customers to know the benefits of open banking, so that customers start accepting and using the open banking features that would be available to them in the times to come. With this, I will end and happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Ankit Sharma, again, Director at Strategy at PwC. Thank you so much. A great presentation there. That last slide, I did want to touch on that last slide that you just spoke of. You talked about strategic opportunities and pathways for growth for banks. I want to marry that with the prior slide to that on banking models, product focus or customer focus. Ankit, if we talk about strategic opportunities and pathways for growth for banks, is it an either or situation for product focus or customer focus models, or can a balance be struck?
Yeah, on this, there are multiple examples in the world right now, which we are seeing of different banks. Most of the banks have decided on a combination of these two. So it's not a choice between one or the other. I'll give you an example. From a customer relationship focus, it basically means that the bank is owning the relationship with the customer, and the entire product or the infrastructure is being offered by a different player. To give you an example, right now there's a lot of talk of Amazon entering the financial services market, Google entering the financial services market. There, what we are seeing is the customer relationship layer is being offered by Amazon or Google, which are not banks per se. But what they're doing is they're partnering with a bank that is offering them the underwriting capabilities, that is offering them the regulatory oversight that they need, that's offering them the IT expertise that they need as well. So, for example, Apple, another example that comes to mind, they partner with Goldman Sachs to provide the loans in the US and in Europe. That's an example where Goldman Sachs decided to be the product player and offer the customer relationship to Apple. But on the other hand, we are seeing other examples as well, where banks are aiming to control the entire value chain. For example, for a bank like FirstBank, where FirstBank would own the entire value chain, right from customer relationship up to the back end in our operations. There's no right or wrong answer. It depends on where you see the value of becoming profitable, being and what are the customers want as well, and on the maturity of the market. Right? I believe it could be a combination of all of these four models depending on the products.
Thank you so much for explaining that. Thank you very much once again, Ankit Sharma. Really appreciate your insights and that great presentation. All right. The party continues, ladies and gentlemen. Keep your comments and questions in the Q&A box. Remember, you're going to get a brochure. You're also going to get all these slides. Also, stay in tune because it gets even better. We now have a panel session that is going to be handled, that is going to be run, directed by Professor Olayinka David West. Let me tell you about her. Professor David West is a professor of information systems with almost 3 decades of experience in the IT and financial services industry. She is a passionate advocate for digital transformation and inclusive finance with her research and practice engagements involving policy and strategic management interventions towards digitally transformed businesses and societies. Professor David West is the Associate Dean at the Lagos Business School, LBS, premier business school in Nigeria, and sits on the school's management board. She leads the Sustainable and Inclusive Digital Financial Services Initiative, a research and advocacy initiative dedicated to enhancing financial inclusion in Nigeria, which is very important and has been dominating conversations for years. She has an expert certifications in financial inclusion policy and digital money and is a governing council member of the FinTech Association of Nigeria and a member of the African Women in Finance and Payments. She's a certified information system auditor, certified in the governance of enterprise IT, and academic advocate to the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. She is also a qualified practitioner of the skills framework for the information age. Professor David West, it is a pleasure to have you. Take it away. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Rochus, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to FinTech 5.0, and I think this is really a novel achievement of FirstBank, having participated, I think, in the first FinTech 1.0 event a couple of years ago. So we have introductions of Professor Ikekwe and Ankit, and I'll just briefly introduce my other panelists. And the first is representing the Central Bank of Nigeria, because we can't be talking about open banking without talking about the regulatory side of it. And we have the Director of the Payment Systems Management Department, Mr. Musa Itopajimo, represented by Mr. Olubukola Akinwumi, who is here with us. Welcome, Mr. Akinwumi. And then we also have on the panel with us the Executive Director of Operations and IT at the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System, which again, as you know, is part of the plumbing infrastructure for our banking system. We have Mr. Aminu Maida. Welcome, Aminu. And then we have one of our fintechs who works in this space, which called OnePipe, and Mr. Okwe Adeoye, who calls himself the Chief Plumber, and I'm sure he'll explain that to you in a bit more detail. Hi, Okwe, and welcome to this conversation. And then last but not the least, we have our Chief Strategy Officer at FirstBank, Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer at FirstBank, my namesake, Mr. Olayinka Situ. Welcome to this conversation, and he'll be giving us the strategic behind-the-scenes look of what's under the hood within the FirstBank environment. And I'm sure a lot of you are curious as to say what's under the hood with FirstBank as we go into this conversation. So I'm still waiting for Professor Ikekwe to turn on his video and join us here. But I think one of the things I'll put on the table now is how do we get more women in these conversations, right? Because right now it's almost as, they normally say, blessed are they amongst women, but it's not the case in this conversation. So I'll put that on the table now. And ladies and gentlemen, please let's start the conversation. And I would expect your comments and questions and feedback as we proceed. So I'm going to jump right in, and I'll start with you, Mr. Akinwumi, because I think that we've heard about the regulation. And when we talk about open banking, we've looked at the innovation side and the customer perception side, which is pulling us in one direction, but also on the regulatory side, we have the regulations, not just from the banking industry, but also even the data protection side in terms of consumer protection. How do we ensure privacy and security of consumer data? How do we build consumer awareness in our environment, knowing that we're trying to also ensure that consumers know what they're providing to the customers? And then how do we also ensure that we have the right infrastructure and ecosystem to start up with? So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Akinwumi, and let's start and say the regulations, right? And some of the questions, we're also pulling questions that we received at the registration, at the time of registration, to give us a guide as to how this conversation will go. So we have our regulation, the open banking guidelines that the CBN has implemented. Can you just give us some more insights into how the guidelines are going to be operationalized? What will the registry look like? And who is going to be licensed who can be licensed and who will be licensed under those guidelines?
Thank you very much, Prof. It's a pleasure being on the panel with you as usual. I think you've mentioned the fact that I'm representing the Director of Payment System Management Department of the Central Bank, Mr. Musa Jimo. Thank you for your question. First is to say that the framework simply tries to get everyone in the industry talking as to how we intend to eventually have an open banking regime. The framework looks specifically around the risk management environment that we need to build in ensuring that when we eventually go full blast open banking regime, we take care of the main concerns of customers, which has already been seen on this platform, that a number of questions have been coming up around how do you ensure that customers are comfortable within the new regime. So one of the items on the framework has to do with the open banking registry, which you rightly mentioned. The current framework has already indicated that the bank will be engaging the industry, stakeholders within the industry, to come up with defined guidelines on how a number of the provisions within the framework will be translated into operations. And one of those core aspects is the open banking registry, which will bring transparency to the entire regime and ensure that customers can look up and know who they are dealing with in order to be comfortable to deal with those who are likely to play within that regime. In addition to that, the specifics as to how stakeholders or players will come into the registry will be defined along with the guidelines that will come up subsequently. I'll leave it at that for now, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akinwumi. So what you're saying is that there's going to be some element of co-creation, and the central bank is going to do this alongside the ecosystem and ensure that we have guidelines and frameworks that work for the context of what we're trying to achieve in Nigeria. But the bigger picture is common and shared in terms of the risk-based environment that we need to operate in. How do we bring participants and actors together to speak to one another in this space? Great, thank you. So let me come to you, Aminu. I'm looking at the plumbing side of the open banking system. Now, infrastructure is one of the critical things. And what we see here is that, yes, we have some fundamental infrastructure, but then how do we now build the right infrastructure for this open banking environment? How do we ensure that we have the right security, that have the right sharing rights and requirements that would ensure that safety, protection, privacy are maintained? Go ahead, Aminu.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Good afternoon once again. I'm glad to be here. This is my second FinTech summit with the FirstBank. It really is an interesting one, because I'll just start by saying that we need to first of all consider who are we building this infrastructure for, and what kind of what are the expectations. Now, I think I've heard some of the previous speakers talk about whether players want to control the entire value chain or whether they want to just maintain part of the value chain. I think for the people who are going to really make this a success, which are the agile and nimble fintechs, the more modern technology companies, I think it's very, very important that we provide an infrastructure that is suitable for them. And I think if you take that into consideration, maybe some might agree, some might not agree. I think it's going to be an environment whereby for the success, everybody needs to take a space within the value chain so that we do what we are best at doing and allow the ones who are going to deliver that experience to basically deliver it. So, of course, the banks are going to be there. You could almost say they're at the sort of bottom of the chain. And now the question is, how far up the chain will they go? Ourselves at NIBS, we will, I hope, maintain our traditional place within the value chain as an aggregator. But now the question of aggregator of what? Several points have been raised around security, around consent. And I think this is where NIBS is going to play a critical role. I've seen some of the draft standards. I mean, anybody can speculate and say that the BVN is going to play a critical role. So when it comes to consent management, for example, I mean, we can even do better than what EU and other clients have done. Because even though BVN was a necessity of our scenario, it has actually helped us leapfrog in a lot of ways. And I think open banking is going to be another scenario where we're going to see that because of the availability of BVN, some of the challenges you've seen in other climes, we're not going to see them. So for example, consent management and authentication can be based on your BVN as the first, the authentication as a first level, as a first factor before you go now into the actual authentication by the banks. Within NIBS, for example, we have a database called the ICAD database, which aggregates all the accounts across the industry. So again, that can feed up higher up the chain when, say, a FinTech is trying to access open banking services and it actually just wants to say, okay, where is this customer? Okay, it starts with, okay, give me your BVN. I can do my KYC. I can do consent management based on the BVN. You can then come back to NIBS on the ICAD database and actually discover where this customer banks, and you can begin the aggregation journey there. So for us at NIBS, I think, and I'd say by and large for vast majority of the industry, I don't think you'd necessarily even see new infrastructure. I think what you're going to see is a lot of repurposing and actually making additional use of what we already have. You know, some of these things, like I said, about like BVN, we didn't envision it for open banking, but when the conversation started, everybody naturally gravitated, oh, if we need to do KYC, it's BVN. If we need to do authentication, we can start with BVN. We've got the ICAD database, like I said. And for us, the major thing or the last thing I would say is for all the players in the value chain, up until the point where we're delivering value to the customer, it's going to be very important that, I mean, some have already undergone a digital transformation, some are in a process, but as part of any ongoing digital transformation, an API strategy needs to be clearly defined. For example, at NIBS now, we strongly kind of say, you know what, everybody talks to each other via an API. Now, without that internal mindset shift, whereby people start thinking of their APIs as products as opposed to the actual products themselves, I think it's going to cause a bit of friction because it's going to be a new way of doing things. I mean, all of a sudden, a bank has opened up its APIs and it has no control over what a FinTech does with it to a certain extent because the other bank next door has also done the same.
Okay, I mean, I'm going to ask you to pause there, and I'm going to come back to some of the things you spoke about, especially regarding the openness and data sharing, and especially as it relates to cost. Because don't forget that I'm also going to drive this conversation around how do we enhance inclusion, and one of the challenges inclusion is affordability. So how do we ensure that we bring down the cost, we bring in more players into the ecosystem to ensure that it's not just the banks that have access, but there really is open ecosystem access. So Akwe, coming to you, You are our chief plumber. Tell us what you do as chief plumber and how, and I think Aminu started talking about having an API strategy. How are you enabling API strategies amongst the ecosystem, and how are you sort of supporting the bank-to-bank play and bank-to-business play?
Thank you, Dr. Inka. It's good to get in touch with you again. So I'll say, to address the question directly of what do I do on a day-to-day, I potentially wear two hats. I'm also a trustee with Open Banking Nigeria, the non-governmental organization that has been advocating for this thing for a while. Then on the other side, I also run One Pipe. Now, on the open banking side, most of our focus has been getting everyone talking about what we're doing, about why open banking is good for everyone, about how it is not a problem, but actually a good thing. Now, on the One Pipe side, what we have been doing is that we've been working more closely with banks who have bought into that vision to say, in preparation for open banking and when the time comes, what do you need to have in place? What does your API strategy look like? What are some of the ways you can monetize when the regime finally comes? We even go ahead and work with some of those banks to create some products in the short term to demonstrate the viability of that, particularly for things like driving financial inclusion, new account openings, and things like that. So on the side, we've been working with some banks who have bought into the vision to say, let's show you that this thing is good, practically. On the non-governmental, on the NGO side of things, it's mostly advocacy. It's good for you. It's not bad. I don't know if that addresses the question.
Okay, great. Thank you, Okwe. So how, in terms of looking at that, how do we now look at this broadly? So you're saying you're doing a lot of advocacy on the non-governmental side. So how does that look like for the woman selling Bolly on the streets, for example? How does she know who to share her data with or who not to share her data with? How do we advocate to that level?
We're very, very alike. Yeah, so at the core of everything we do at One Pipe, we always have those internal debates around who are we really trying to serve. And this example you have given is what we often use internally, the woman selling Bolly by the side. And the practical example I will give is, imagine a chef that can cook good meals. This chef decided I can cook so well and I'm going to open a chain of restaurants, just like the prof mentioned. And then there's a limit to the capacity that that chef can open enough restaurants to serve all the women selling Bolly, for example, right? So to the best of his capacity as a chef, maybe we'll open one restaurant somewhere in Ikeja, somewhere in Osogbo, but there's a limit to which he will get to that he can reach the woman selling Bolly. Now, imagine that that guy running that limited chain of restaurants, if I can put it that way, then has an arrangement where you can come to one of his restaurants and buy his food and repackage it in pure water sachet or whatever he can package it into, and then take it all the way to the woman selling Bolly. What that does is that it has created extended distribution for the restaurant at the back. It has created a way to reach the woman selling Bolly with what the guy at the back has been cooking. If you bring that into banking now, I'm a woman selling Bolly by the roadside. Once in a while, I will need some money to help me have 2 stores on my streets now. I potentially will never be able to save up enough to do that, maybe. Or I may not earn enough and accumulate it enough to do that. Now, imagine me trying to get a loan from a bank that doesn't know me so well to do that expansion. They don't even see my money, like it's always in cash. And now I'm trying to expand to 2 stores on my street. They don't have that much information. But imagine that the guy who sells me plantain to do my Bolly, who knows my business, is able to say, okay, I can arrange for you to be financed by FirstBank to have your second store on the streets because I know how much plantain you buy from me daily. I know how you sell it. What that has done is that on the back of an open banking or open API regime, the man selling plantain can do a deal with FirstBank, who has the required deposit to finance the madam, to get it to the madam to sell more Bolly and expand her business. Now translate that to the roughly, depending on who you choose to believe, 50 million SMEs in the informal sector we have in the country. You have radically changed this country. And I think this same concept can expand across Africa, can expand across all developing countries. And I think without the support of things like credit and investment products that make sense, you cannot advance an economy. There's almost nothing you can do. And there's only so much that the restaurants in VI can use to get food to the madam selling poly on the streets.
Great, thank you so much, Okwe. And I think that one thing you're emphasizing as well is what Professor Ikekwe also said in terms of, let's not look at this as a banking conversation, but let's look at it as a catalytic transformational tool that would drive business, drive economic growth, and drive the digital economy of Nigeria in that sense. So, and Keith, I'm going to come to you briefly now, just speaking on what Okwe just laid on in terms of how do we now, yes, we know banks have structured data sets that they've collected over years, but how do we now bring in other third-party data sets, for example, like the informal lender or anybody else within the woman selling boli. So bolis are street food, for example, right? And you live in Mexico, so you know what street food looks like, right? So the woman selling boli, and how do we ensure that she interacts with her suppliers? How do we bring all those data points into this same open banking framework? And whether it's structured or unstructured data, how do we ensure that it's pseudo-anonymized based on, the business they're doing, etc.? What are your thoughts from global experiences and practices?
Yeah, I think that this is a very, very pertinent question. When we talk about sharing data, I guess there are two main concepts that we need to understand. One is around open banking, where the data is financial. It's financial data that we are talking about, and the other one is open data, right? Where we are talking about any data. It could be structured, unstructured, financial, could even be health. It could be unstructured information available on social media. So now I'll answer these questions in two bits, right? One is around open banking. When we talk about open banking, what we have seen in different markets, especially within the UK and in some countries of Latin America, and I would say even Singapore as well, what they've done is the regulator has defined specific APIs, essentially what data items would be shared, how they would be shared, when they would be shared, and with whom they would be shared. And the question of with whom is extremely important here, because open banking does not mean that my personal financial data would be open to any financial organization or any third party. It would only be open to the organizations that pass through certain checks, certain audits of and have tick in the box after checks from a specific regulator. But when we're talking about open data, the whole analysis and the whole question changes there. And that's where I'll now get to the answer which you want me to give around what sort of information we would use from food stands in order to try and figure out what loans or what financial products we can offer them. Here on this aspect, I think financial inclusion becomes a very important angle. The person who's on the food stand, if that person does not have a bank account or any trail of the transactions that are happening at his or her food stand, open banking would find, I would say from my perspective, and I guess, I'm open to, challenge from other panelists, open banking would not be able to help that person in order to, in order for that person to get the proper credit or proper investment or proper saving accounts as well. So I think that the first aspect is getting that person on the, on the step of financial inclusion. Let them open up a bank account. And now talking about Mexico or Latin America in general, financial inclusion here is very low. Only 45% of adults have a bank account. So that is a significant challenge. So so in addition to looking at customer experience, what open banking is trying to do here from a Mexico context is trying to figure out how we can include those people within this financial space. Let them open up an account, and once we have some information about them in terms of their transactions, then we can offer them products, then we can offer them services that might be helpful for them.
Okay,
so this is how I would try and look at this.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ankit. So what I'm hearing is that there's a precursor, especially for driving the informal sector, to open banking, which might be the open data frameworks that we need to see how we can plug in, because we're also going to need to understand some of their behavioral patterns that might not be banking related data to ensure that we can actually understand. And I think this is going back to what Professor Ikekwe also alluded to in terms of insights and perception-based data that we need to generate and understand what our customers will be needing in the future. So Yinka, I'm coming to you now, given the fact that you are our oldest banker and you're driving that transformation and change. So what do you anticipate for your customers regarding open banking, and what does that customer experience, what's that customer experience going to look like in the future from the FirstBank perspective?
Okay, thank you once again, Yinka. So open banking at FirstBank is a part of our core corporate priorities. The mission and the goal is for us to claim leadership within the market across all aspects of the value chain. Like everything we do at the bank, we do indeed look at it from the customer point of view. So I'll talk through the propositions to our customers, but also talk through what we're doing to engage our partners as well within the open banking framework. So the first and foremost thing is really we're bringing to the customer is around value add propositions. We're being very, very deliberate around looking through the portfolio of opportunities, using our own data insights to understand our customer preferences, white space in the services and products, and then thinking through, again, very strategically, whether through open banking framework, through our own internal capabilities to say, how do we now start to solve banking problems, or beyond banking as well. So with the financial inclusion is one, lifestyle offerings at one, as we've seen over the last 2-3 years. Banking is going beyond payments and credit. It's around how do we empower you through all the key stages of your life, right? And that's one of the aspects where open banking will really come to the fore. So first and foremost is around crafting evidence-based, data-driven value propositions, value add beneficial products and services. The second one is around the customer experience. As you said, navigating the value chain around giving consent, understanding what does this mean, what is this proposition, what are the commercial aspects of it. It's around, as we've done with most of our products as services as well, around seamlessness, right? Looking through the customer journeys, ensuring that you not only complete your transaction, but sometimes it can actually be quite pleasant and seamless as well. So customer journeys, especially through open banking. And that's quite critical, especially when you start getting into multiple party arrangements, right? So that you want to make sure that the background arrangements are seamless to the customers. The second one is around digital and how we innovate. It's quite clear within industry that customers, the primary source is around digital. So we aim to meet you where you are. So taking an omni-channel approach. So whether you want to transact or engage with us through any of our platforms, right? So whether it's through our mobile app, online banking, and even the branch. So that's one of the advantages we have at FirstBank. We're positioned to meet the customers where they are and engage with them how they prefer to do that. And we've invested in that as well. And that even includes through our massive agent banking network as well. So we're able to do both physical and digital. So the key thing around omni-channel banking is around being able to meet the customers where they are and then provide them a seamless experience across all of your touch points. The last one, which I want to talk through just because of time, is around the trust. FirstBank, we're a lot of things. We're a digital transformation leader. we're taking the for innovation, and like I said, we also aim to take leadership within the open banking space, within the industry. But one of the key attributes as FirstBank is around trust. I think within the market, that brand and trust factor is there. And that's quite critical, especially as we've heard through the panel, through the session around customer data, hesitancy, privacy. What do you do around security? We've built a very well fought for and well-deserved good relationship with our customers around trust. And again, I think that puts us in a very good position for customers to start to engage around this open banking thing. So even if there's some skepticism with our third parties, we're able to leverage the trust we've earned with our customers around those open banking propositions. So those are just a few key things around what and how we're thinking around the customer agenda vis-a-vis open banking. I'll talk very quickly around the partnerships, but maybe I'll pause and
pause for a minute, Yinka, pause for a minute. And thanks for that, because one thing you're bringing out in your conversation is not just adopting the techniques you're adopting, which are human-centered and basically customer centricity at the heart of what you're doing, and using the evidence that you've acquired to date to help better understand and build those products and services for the customers. So I think the proof of the pudding will be in the eating in general. So I'll let your customers attest to that in the near future. So let me come back to you, Mr. Akinwumi, in terms of timing. So this operationalization, the co-creation, when is that happening, and how fast are we going to sort of take off with this open banking?
Thank you very much, Professor Lainka. Well, timing, I would be very definitive here. However, I can tell you that the industry is ready to go. We've been engaging since the issuance of the framework. The guidelines are being put together. We hope that perhaps before the end of the year, we'll be able to have an industry agreed guidelines for operationalization. We want to ensure that the industry is on board with us here, stakeholders across various strata of the industry, from the FinTechs to the incumbents. They are all on board, speaking with us and trying to create what we expect, using Professor Ikekwe's illustration, that will be very catalytic for the economy. And it's quite gratifying for the bank, the kind of responses we've been getting from the industry in terms of stakeholders' participation. So we believe that that is being created, that it's already on in a way. That's what I would say, because the industry is receptive to the framework. They are all working together. People already have an idea of where we're going. We just want to get to that consensus where once we have that consensus, we go to the, we come out with the guidelines, and in a short framework period, we start feeling the impact of open banking. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I think that what I'm hearing you say is that we all need to agree and realize that there's a bigger picture around what we're doing today. We're not just thinking about banking, we're actually going beyond banking and looking at the global macroeconomic impact of open banking in terms of jobs, catalyzing other sectors like agri, and just basically being that catalyst across the economic systems. Aminu, I'm going to come to you now. And again, like I said, I'm holding you up on the financial inclusion side. One of the biggest challenges we have, especially trying to reach our rural locations, is cost to use and cost to serve, right? How do we start to break down these costs with open banking? Because the problem is that a lot of financial services providers can't go to some of these impoverished areas because of lower economic levels of activity, lower socioeconomic status, et cetera, et cetera. How do we start to break this down using open banking? And what is NIBS going to be doing to ensure that the infrastructure can actually get across Nigeria? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's a game of scale to start with. In terms of reach, I mean, we're talking about a digital platform here. So, services offered, from even outside Nigeria can reach any part of the country as long as we have that connectivity in place. There are certain initiatives that are underway, probably too early to speak about. But I think this is where, in my opinion, I think it's something that we will have to rely and work very closely with the telcos because they are the ones that hold the key to connectivity. Technologies like 5G are around the corner, which, promise improved connectivity, better, response times, etc. So for us at NIBS, I think is for us to provide a platform that can scale. I mean, we've already proven that over the past years with our core platforms for aggregating POS, NIP, and the BVN. So we'll continue to do that. And also, I think when you talk about those rural areas, the beauty of open banking is if we do it at scale, it should now be, I shouldn't use the word cheap, but it should now make economic sense for small, what I would call the smaller scale entrepreneurs. So if an MFB, for example, wants to create digital products, maybe one day you can even be looking at, okay, I want to create a product for a village. Imagine if these open banking has matured, these APIs are very easily accessible, the standards have matured. So even the investment you'd have to make in terms of the people building these products is being made so simple for them that it now begins to become viable, that very small scale innovation can happen within very small geographic regions. Because the reality is, we spoke about Chief Plumber, you were talking to the Chief Plumber about the Bolisela, but you might go up north and you'll be talking about the Fura and Nono seller.
And Kulikuli.
And Kulikuli seller. So their needs, the way they interact are totally different and it's never going to be a one-heart-fit-all. So if we can do this thing at scale, in such a way that there's we can benefit from those economies of scale to bring the prices down for people innovating. And like I said, working very closely with the telcos who are the key to connectivity, I think we're going to see that reduction in cost and availability of services in those areas.
Great, thank you. So we have the framework from the central bank, we have the framework, and then we now need the will to ensure that we will work together to bring down the cost of innovation, share knowledge, share data, to ensure that we can actually create. Nigeria is one of those countries where there's no one size fits all. It's not a magic bullet. So this problem, we're going to continue talking about it because it's going to need nuanced solutions in different locations. The final thing I want to ask my panelists to close out with is, Professor Ikekwe talked about the infrastructure, and there are two sides of infrastructure, the hard infrastructure and the soft infrastructure, which is the talent and the skill sets that we need to drive these things, the agility that our companies need to be going through, especially our banks, for example, given the fact that they're the oldest in the industry. So I'm going to start with you, Yinka. What are we doing about the soft side, the soft infrastructure, the skills, the talent? And I'm going to go around as final comments from all my panelists. Thank you. I'll start with you, Yinka. You're muted.
Thank you. Great question and a very topical question and quite an endemic question within the industry, but particularly more so around open banking, where it requires a lot of, I guess, emerging skills, especially in the market. So around data analytics, AI, neural networks, cloud APIs, and the like. So we're doing a number of things around that. But one of the first things around, which if I take a step back, is the opportunity to collaborate so that different people with different capabilities are able to come together bring a lot of synergies around a product or service proposition. So that's one of the first benefits, I think, of open banking itself. You're able to collaborate, aggregate very different skill sets across partnerships to come together. So open banking itself provides a kind of answer to this talent skill. But within the bank, we're doing a number of things. So first and foremost is just differentiation and recognizing that the IT technology skill set and those consultants or people that work in that space think differently with different ecosystem. They need different work experiences. So the employee value proposition is being differentiated first and foremost. So, and it could be from very soft things like work experience, work from home, virtual working environment. So creating a digital lab environment, to the harder stuff around compensation. So the first thing is that we recognize and are providing a differentiated work experience, employee value proposition for them.
Okay.
Second thing is still around partnerships.
Okay.
So second thing is still around partnerships, where we're partnering with specific universities and organizations, and we have a pipeline of talent. Okay. In-house as well, we have very well matured talent and development programs as well. And then lastly, we do have external partnerships in terms of where we're exploring some offshore development partnerships as well. So that's in a nutshell around how we're thinking through the talent question. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Yinka. So basically the whole value chain and reskilling and upskilling and bringing in new talent and new workforce and looking at the future of work. Thank you. Ankit, your take on global trends.
Yeah, so answering this question, I think what I've seen at banks that have been successful in developing new models and developing propositions for their customers in open banking. I believe there's a philosophy in agile methodology which one of the banks, which is in Europe, that also has offices in Latin America. What they believe in or they follow is that we need to do it fast. We might fail, but we need to fail fast and then learn even faster. And I think this is where this is what banks need to start doing, because it takes a while for an organization as big as, I believe, FirstBank or other big financial institutions to change their mindset of implementing new things, seeing if it works. If it doesn't work, then go on a different path. And I think that's one soft aspect that I believe banks must start implementing, which fintechs, which are new organizations, have they kind of that's in their DNA. So that's one thing, right? The philosophy. The other one is around leadership. The leadership must have awareness of what if you're talking about open banking, what open banking is, how they can make money out of it, how they could add more value to the customers, improve the customer experience. So I would say these would be the two key things. One is around the overall philosophy of being agile, changing, and second is around leadership being aware and supporting the organization at every level to follow this philosophy.
Great, and those are key tenets of digital transformation in general, and I think COVID to a certain degree has catalyzed that thinking. However, we hope we don't fall back into our comfort zones and wait for the old normal to come back again, but how do we continue pushing the trends forward? Thank you very much for that, Ankit. Mr. Akimomi, from the regulatory side, what are we doing?
Thank you very much. The CBN earlier, I think late last year, released the regulatory framework, the framework for the regulatory sandbox, which will provide a test ground for innovation, for ideas. We believe that will support efforts with respect to addressing the soft issues. And very soon, I believe that the regulatory sandbox will be up for the first cohort. And I'm very sure that that will also support the idea of open banking and also encourage more innovators. In addition to that, we are all aware that the creative industry financing initiative of the central bank is still there for IT to sustain the pipeline of talents that we need around information technology expertise, and that the bank is not relenting on that, and we encourage more people to take advantage of that in order to ensure that we sustain the level of talent availability that we require for open banking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I'll come for that creative, instrument soon, because I need reskilling as well. Then coming to you, Aminu, how about you?
I think a number of things have already been addressed by fellow panelists. I think it's really about, because if you, I studied IT decades ago, and back then, I think working with APIs and programming was purely a field for people who actually had a background in that area. But now you tend to have people who, they might have even learned programming on YouTube. So, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can do it or understand the core principles. But I think it is the way that things have come to be today. So I think it's very important for us to make sure that as we're building these APIs, we're building them with the sort of mindset that the users of these APIs are not necessarily going to be experts. So they need to be built with a lot of the complexity abstracted away. Standards are going to play a huge part in this. Now, the framework and operational guidelines that are in draft have already specified some of this, both on the security side, the API request and response. And what you then find is that it almost becomes, once people become experts at it, so you go to a FirstBank open banking API, you master how to use it. Hopefully a lot of the complexity has been abstracted away. You go to Paystack or Flutterwave or open banking API, and it's the same way of doing things. So I think it's very, very important that the standards are put in place and are adhered to, so that over time they can almost become gospel for anybody in the industry. The other bit is just making sure we are generating a lot of interest. So the regulatory sandbox was mentioned. There are also other initiatives which are working closely with the regulatory sandbox, like the financial services, financial services initiatives. Now, initiatives like that are all about awareness, giving opportunity to those that might not necessarily have the opportunity. They have a sandbox, an API sandbox, which is basically aggregating a lot of these open banking APIs from different institutions, because I think it's going to take a while before, in my opinion, before everybody opens it up in a safe and secure manner, such that any college student in his dormitory can just go and sign up and start innovating. So I think those making it simple by ensuring we adhere to standards and abstract all the complexity, awareness through initiatives like the FSI, whereby they're having regular hackathons. And I think there's even one next week in Abuja. Mm-hmm. So I think those kind of initiatives will really, really help pull in the talents that would make use of these APIs, because I think it's going to take maybe 5-10 years for us to really see the transformation that everybody is talking about. But we also need to make sure that we prepare the talent to be able to leverage and take advantage of the opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Amina. And that's really about how do we ensure that there's a pool and we're creating the talent. Yes, we know that we can all learn programming, but then, you can also break many things from not knowing how to do things properly, especially when you're working across different technological stacks in general. So, Okwe, you know how to fail fast and fail forward. So tell us how you staying afloat.
Yeah, so I think for me, I will speak a bit more structurally, borrowing from a theme that Amino had said on an earlier comment. So I would say on the talent side of things, I would suggest that it is much easier or better to let organizations with a particular DNA focus on what their best strengths are. So a bank will be able to attract bankers and can create the processes and ways to attract bankers, people that manage risk and liquidity and things like that. A tech company will have systems, processes, tools to attract tech people, for example. An infrastructure company will know what they do to attract people like them. So if the ecosystem is designed in such a way that everyone is willing to collaborate, then you can let different parts of the stack concentrate on how to attract the best type of talents for themselves. Now, for us as OnePipe, for example, we also have the same talent crunch that everybody has, but we have focused our posturing, our hiring processes, how we reach out to people, to the kind of people we think our organization needs, for example. There's no way in the world that OnePipe will go and try and hire somebody that understands liquidity, treasury. It's just a waste of our time. We will never learn it. The same way a bank will struggle to attract a 22-year-old guy that wants to wear shorts to the office. It's just hard. So let us hire the guys that want to wear shorts. You hire the guys that want to wear suits. Let the guy that understands policy hire the guys that want to do policy, and we can all do fine. That's my theory.
Okay, great. Thank you, Okwe. So Okwe is saying that let's all stay in our lanes and play to our strengths. And, while we have blurred lines fusing between sectors, etc., we need to be mindful of that. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to all my panelists. And I think that one thing that we've started talking about today is being an transformation. And because I think Professor Ikekwe mentioned that whether we like it or not, financial flows are essential to anything that we're going to be doing. So that operating system layer that we need to ensure that monies can move back and forth. And it's, again, when we look at it in the bigger picture, we're going into an AFTA, right? The African Free Trade Continental Agreement. How do we ensure that MSMEs can be catalyzed and become part of that ecosystem? And this is where the financial flows come from. And I think FirstBank has started the conversation. Let's keep talking, let's keep engaging, let's realize that what we're doing is not just about building or securing the financial services ecosystem. It's really about building the layer and the foundational layer to make economic activity grow and scale in a digital environment. So I want to say thank you to Yinka and Kate Okwe, Bukola and Aminu, and of course, Professor Ikekwe for sharing their thoughts with us on this day. And we know that the conversation is not over yet, but it will continue. But we know that from an open banking perspective, it is the starting of a developmental ecosystem. And Aminu, thank you for reminding us that it's not a sprint. It's a marathon journey that we're embarking on, and new innovations will come across. Thank you to FirstBank and the FirstBank leadership for demonstrating that they're willing to have conversations like this and they're not threatened by the likes of Okwe and who are coming to eat their lunch as we have it in the conversations that we're having today. Thank you to Aminu as well, to saying that, we want to work with everybody. And of course, to the Central Bank of Nigeria, who again has started pushing the envelope with the likes of Open Banking Initiative to say, let's start having these conversations and let's start advancing Nigeria's financial system to ensure that we're globally ready to take on the world and become that financial center of Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention and thank you for listening. Over to you, Rotus.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Professor Olayinka David West. Fantastic panel discussion. Very quickly, a big thanks to Dr. Olubukola Akinwumi of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Aminu Maida of NIBS, the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System PLC, Mr. Okwe Adeoye, CEO, Chief Plumber, I like that, of One Pipe, Mr. Olayinka Situ, Chief Transformation Officer at FirstBank, Ankit Sharma. I have to get this right, Director at Strategy and, which is part of the PwC network. Thank you all. That was a great panel discussion, very in-depth. For our participants, if you're in the chat group, you will notice that there is a poll, right? This Customer Service Week from the 4th of October to the 8th. And so there's a poll that we'd like for you to participate in. And just like Valentine's Day, FirstBank, of course, understands that you show appreciation to your customers all year long. Just like, it's not just on Valentine's Day, you show appreciation to your boo. It's all year long. So Customer Service Week, do participate in that poll. It is in the chat group, so you can click on the link and share your thoughts there. Also, remember that all the presentations you've seen will be sent to you via email, because you put in your email when you signed up for this great discussion, FinTech Summit 5.0 from FirstBank. You will also, they're also on FirstBank's YouTube page. You also get access to this video. And again, for all the startups that have been asking how do we collaborate with FirstBank, smeconnect.firstbanknigeria.com for the SMEs out there. All right, it is time to bring in for a closing address the Deputy Managing Director of FirstBank, Mr. Francis Shobo. Mr. Shobo, the floor is yours. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's really been a great event. I decided to dress like this so that Okwe knows that banks have started hiring people in shorts and jumpers. Thank you. As we mark the end of the FinTech Summit 5.0, the theme Open Banking and its derivative opportunities in the financial ecosystem, I use this opportunity to thank everyone for taking time out to be a part of this historic event. We're leaving this summit with recommendations on how to improve open banking in Nigeria. And it is my understanding that suggestions from here will be circulated with relevant stakeholders for action. Looking at the quality of conversations that have taken place during the summit, it's clear that we are right to be deliberate in the diversified selection of panelists and varied participants. You will agree with me that over the ages, there have been numerous scientific discoveries that seemed counterintuitive at the time, but ended up shaping the overarching worldviews governing human reasoning. Open banking has the potential to be such a discovery, capable of defining innovation as we know it and pushing delivery of financial services to new frontiers. FirstBank will continue to play its role in fostering thought leadership and innovation for the betterment of humanity. Our 127-year-old culture of encouraging innovation drives us to always seek out and develop the next best solution capable of enhancing customer experience and value optimization across the markets we operate. We will continue to set the pace in the development of new trends that will define the future of banking and finance across the world. As this year's FinTech Summit comes to an end, we have again set the stage for an engaging and insightful conversation into innovations and discoveries that are redefining the direction of human enterprise in the finance world. We look forward to continue to showcase the ways in which we are championing these innovations to put our customers first. I thank you once again for attending this year's summit, as we look forward to receiving you at FinTech 6.0 in 2022. Thank you.
Mr. Shobo, sorry, your video was off and the participants said they want to see your shorts.
Oh, so sorry. I don't know why I thought I put it on and it didn't. So heavy I am. So I was thinking of that we banks, we started hiring guys in jumpers and shorts. Thank you.
Mr. Shobo, thank you so much. Yes, you do look very casually, fashionably casually dressed. I appreciate you. Thank you so much again. Deputy Managing Director of FirstBank, Mr. Francis Shobo. Ladies and gents, that brings us to the end of another very in-depth, very knowledgeable, very, very great conversation here from FirstBank FinTech Summit 5.0. I thank you all for all the participants once again. Thank you to the FirstBank leadership putting this together. Again, FirstBank is at the forefront of the technology conversation coming out of Africa's largest economy, Nigeria. I am Rotus. It's been a pleasure. Remember, the poll from FirstBank, which is in the comments section there, customer service. It's Customer Service Week. You can get you will get all the videos and all the slides in your email. Thank you all so much. I wish you all a great day. And like the Deputy Managing Director said, Mr. Frenchable, hopefully see you all at the next edition of this very great conversation held by FirstBank. Take care.
Are you a business owner? Been in business for a minimum of 12 months? Would you like to earn extra cash by offering financial services to people in your community? Then join one of the fastest growing business communities in Nigeria. Become a First Money agent. As a First Money agent, you get to enjoy so much that the brand has to offer. Grow your social relevance as FirstBank financial agent in your community, with business expansion possibilities due to increased awareness for your existing business and increased patronage too. Also, you get to earn extra income via commissions from transactions processed from being a First Money agent. To enroll as an agent, visit www.firstbanknigeria.com/personalbanking/ways-to-bank/firstmoney or visit any FirstBank branch to get started. A First Money agent can serve every Nigerian. Service offerings include cash deposits, cash withdrawals, funds transfer, airtime top-up and bill payments, account opening, BVN enrollment, and so much more. What are you waiting for? Partner with us. Become a First Money agent today.
You first. FirstBank.
In 1894, our first branch opened in Lagos, Nigeria. And we took our place in this new land brimming with possibilities and surprises. Take Kano, for instance, where the city's wealthiest trader made his first deposit. 20 bags of silver arriving on camelback. Aren't you glad that we offer online banking today? Expanding across the West African sub-region and beyond, our early presence made it possible for all hardworking Africans to build great things. So is it any wonder that not one, but two First Bankers have gone on to become Nigeria's central banker? We are intricately woven into the fabric of society, supporting polo for over 100 years and pushing the limits of athletic performance. Rooted in tradition, but constantly leaning forward into the future. Are you coming?
You first, FirstBank.